Duke is certainly making it work without Maliq Brown. What has Duke been doing so effectively in his absence? How close to a return could he possibly be? All of that and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome on into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So excited to have you here with us today on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. We've got a big-time focus this time of year on the Duke basketball team, of course, and we're going to visit Duke basketball today with our good pal Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated ahead of their game coming up this weekend against Wake Forest. Duke has been without Maliq Brown over the last couple of games. Why has that been so effective for the Blue Devils in his absence? What are they missing? And so much more. There's always Cooper Flagg conversations to be had, so we'll dive into his excellent play and so much more on today's program. If you have not done so already, please make sure that you follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Your support of our show means so much to me and really want to continue to grow this podcast audience. Also, the show is able to watch each and every day on YouTube. Hello. A shout out to all of our YouTube viewers that watch us each and every day. We see the everyday comments underneath the videos. That means a lot to me when you take the time to do that and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That growth there means so much to us here within the network. And so really do appreciate what you do for us. All right, without further ado, the aforementioned Conor O'Neill is back with us once again to talk about this Duke basketball team, fresh off a couple of very convincing injuries, sans Maliq Brown, and Duke continues to get the job done, so to speak. Conor, I hope you're doing well, my friend.
Doing great. I have COVID, but I'm on the downslope of it, so we're good.
Getting better day by day. That's what we love to hear for sure. Excited to talk about the Duke basketball team and what they've been doing the last few games, picking up really decisive wins. And here we are in a week where they've kind of got the bye week slot within the midweek itself. No midweek game for Duke before they're back in action this weekend at Wake. Let me start right there for just a moment. What is the significance of Duke's schedule right now, if any, that they don't have a game currently as they go throughout the course of this week?
Yeah, it's a little bit of it gives you a chance to have some work on us practices. I don't know if this team was in dire need of those. Obviously, they're rolling. I think 12 games is up to the longest winning streak in the country because Iowa State lost. I think they had a game on the Blue Devils there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. Like, you're never going to turn down rest, and you can't do anything about the schedule. Like, Duke can't go out and schedule some Tuesday game just because they're rolling along. Yeah. But you'd also like to stay in rhythm, and you always run the risk, that inherent risk. I talk about it in football season all the time, whether when you're coming off one of those off weeks, you're either rested or you're rusty. We'll see Saturday if they're rested or rusty. I tend to think it is always a mixture of both. But yeah, it gives Duke a chance to have a little bit of self-reflection. John Shire did talk about how he didn't think their defense was quite up to the standard against Miami and against BC.
Yeah.
The numbers don't exactly bear that out in a 35-point win and whatever the margin was against 25 against
25,
BC.
Yep.
But I can say even after the Miami game, after the 35-point win, I think it was Sion again is always one to talk about defense with in the locker room, and he was talking about how the shots that Miami did make were open and they were giving up too many easy ones. They didn't make it hard enough for Miami. Now, a lot of that has to do with Maliq Brown. He changes whatever team has him in the game. He changes the defensive outlook. So there's that part of it, but I think the work on us practices over the last day or two have mainly been focused on the defensive end.
Yeah, you look at what Duke has done defensively this season. It's been incredible from start to finish. But in these last few games, to your point, there have certainly been moments. And when you're winning by so much, you've got to find the little things to work on to continue to get better day by day, wanting to improve by that 1% on the grind. And looking at that Boston College game in particular, BC has 20 points within the first 10 minutes of that game. So in some ways, they're well on their way to a really productive offensive game. Yeah. And then the game within the game, you see Duke make those adjustments that are needed to lock in defensively. Talking defense, it fits that here we are having this Maliq Brown discussion as well without him being a part of what Duke has done these last couple of games, because he has been so elite on the defensive end of the floor early on in the season when Duke needed someone to kind of help them get right defensively. It was number 6, Maliq Brown, who came into the game to kind of help make that happen. What have you noticed from that dynamic specifically over these last 2 games without him?
I think the biggest thing to take away from the last 2 games is Patrick Ngongba continues to grow and develop. He scored 4 points in both games. He's been pretty strong as a rebounder. It's impressive, as John mentioned on the Monday teleconference. You know, he's a kid that missed his senior season of high school basketball, and he's being asked to come in and play big minutes for a team that has aspirations of winning the ACC and going to a Final Four and winning a national championship. Like, it's a bona fide either top 1 or top 2 team based on whether you're looking at the AP poll or Ken Pom or Bartorvik or whatever. And you've got a backup center right now who's a freshman who's, I think he's played under 100 minutes in his college basketball career. He might have just topped 100, but if he hasn't gotten over that plateau yet, he's close to it. And so that's a tough ask, and he's held his own. I mean, he's not been perfect, and you're not expecting him to be, but he also hasn't been a liability. He had a nice flush on a lob. He had a great dish to Cooper Flagg cutting through the lane for a dunk, I think, or at least a layup against BC. He has held his own. And then, gosh, Mason Gillis, what do you want to say about his versatility that hasn't been said already? I mean, the guy has played the 3 spot this year. He's played the 4 spot. Now he's playing 5 minutes. They didn't get him into the 5 role that much against Miami just because of the game flow. But all of a sudden, I think Conor and Big Pat both had 2 in the first half for the last 6 or 7 minutes against BC. Right. And it was like sink or swim. Like, this is, you know, Mason Gillis at the 5. Our only other option is the one that Duke has made it very clear they don't want to put Cooper Flagg in there at the 5. They do not want to have their guy who's a national player of the year playing the position of the 4-man have to play out of position and go to the 5. They just, like, they're very averse to that and to that having to be the solution. So instead they put 6'5" Mason Gillis in there, who has a solid base and is a strong, and I mean, for lack of a better term, he's a grown-ass man because he's a grad transfer. He's I can't remember his age. He's maybe 23 or 24 years old. Like, he's seen everything. He's a foot shorter than Zach Edey, but he at least played with Zach Edey. He knows what it looks like to play the 5. So yeah, he's given great contributions there, and it's not like they are okay without Maliq Brown. They certainly miss Maliq Brown, but they're getting by without Maliq Brown. I think the best that they could be.
Part of the reason why they're able to get by without Maliq Brown also has to do with the fact that Cooper Flagg is on their basketball team, another freshman who gets better game by game, much like Pat Ngongba II. We're talking about those freshman improvements. You see Flagg well past that 100-minute mark within his college career, doing a little bit of look up here, 90 minutes so far for Big Pat. So he's getting closer to that 100-minute mark, right to your point there, Conor. So we'll talk about Flagg's marketed improvement and so much more after we take this first break here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, Locked On Blue Devils today is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players, and if your picks hit, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. For me, I'm so excited about the hot takes that we're able to put together throughout the football season with conference championship games coming up this week on Prize Picks. I'm looking at Josh Allen for more than 250 passing yards, and also in that AFC title game, once again, give me Travis Kelce for more than 70 receiving yards. It's fun to predict and easy to play. Plus, with Prize Picks Flex Play, you could still double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And with the app, you get your winnings fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. Are you ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks, run your game. Prize Picks is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, Cooper Flagg is really good at basketball. We knew this a little bit going into the season. We are more convinced of this now that 18 college basketball games have played out for Mr. Flagg. He continuously is winning the ACC Freshman of the Week award. He's won the Player of the Week award within the conference several times already. He's been the National Player of the Week thus far, on his way to being the number 1 overall pick. I mean, it's kind of boring at a certain point when you list off everything he's been able to do so far this season. But holy cow, Conor, he just doesn't slow down.
Yeah, it's impressive, man. I only saw Zion in that year at the very end. Like, I was around him in Charlotte. I covered that ACC tournament. I saw him once or twice during the regular season, but it's just different. Like, Cooper's not the cultural phenomenon that Zion was. I think part of the differences too is I've heard this discussed. Zion had a magnetic personality. Like, he had that $1 million smile. Yeah. I'm not saying Cooper doesn't have a nice smile and Cooper doesn't have a good personality. Like, I really enjoy talking to Cooper in the locker room. That's just not him. Where I land here is the blend of motor, athleticism, competitiveness, instinct, drive, all of the intangibles. Then you get to what he does on the basketball court. That's what kind of makes him so special. And that's what I think what I keep trying to come back to is to put into words how impressive it is to watch him do the things that he's doing as a like he's 18 and a month old now. He's appreciated by basketball purists. Like, he's maybe not appreciated by just the casual fan who thinks that they're going to tune in and see him go for 30 every night, because that's not him. But I think basketball purists really appreciate Cooper's game because he does a bit of everything, and he's a bit of a throwback in that regard. Like, if he needs to lock down defensively one night, that's what he's going to do at the cost of his scoring. If he needs to carry the offense, he can go for a 30-point game or a 42-point game like the Notre Dame one. He's just you run out of words to try to talk about his greatness and why he is the type of player that he is. But that's where I land right now. Like, he just does a bit of everything really well. It's kind of an all things all at once approach with how good he is.
And to your basketball purist point that you make there, I think we were more so heading that direction given what the conversation was about him, the player, before he ever played for Duke, right? I mean, immediately it's, this guy's such a great defender. Oh my goodness. And kind of the plays that he's able to make there out on the floor are just going to leave you so amazed. by what he's able to do, but not so much the offensive player that he is. And so it takes that purist, so to speak, to truly appreciate those things. And while now Conor, and so it's like you look at him, you're like, what do you mean he's not an offensive player with the way he's been playing as of late? He turns 18 years old. He's a different beast.
Yeah, he turns 18 years old, and all of a sudden he's a 50% three-point shooter.
Yeah.
I am curious, and we'll get a chance to flesh this out over the next month or so, maybe a couple weeks. I do want to know, like, did anything change with the way he practices his shot or the fundamentals of his shot? Because I thought in the first month to month and a half of the season, he was shooting kind of a knuckleball with little rotation.
Sure.
And now when you look at that shot, the rotation is tighter. Like it's not going to be Jared McCain or Tyrese Proctor or Con Kneppel. Like he's not that pure of a shooter. I don't know if he ever will be in that kind of category, but the rotation is more there, at least to my eye, than it was in November. And that's where I look at the shooting improvement. It's like, okay, he's flicking his wrist a little bit more, and it's giving the ball a little tighter spin, and that's a more consistent jumper, and that's where you lead to. That's what gives you some shooter rolls. It just leads to more consistency, and so that's where I look at his shooting percentages and say that's where the improvements. I think that's where it's come from. I don't know that. I would like to confirm it with Cooper, but to my eye, that's what I see.
What we also see is an uptick in the number of free throws that he's taking as well, and then being efficient around the rim, finishing with absolute authority, which we were seeing a little bit of the first few games starting his college career. But now it just feels like it takes it personally if he doesn't punish the basket, the rim itself, when he goes up.
Yeah, and that's I've got to think that the missteps early in the season against Kentucky and against Kansas, and even the growing pains through wins in the Arizona game, and a little bit in the Auburn game and the Louisville games. He kind of grew through those and understood, like, this is what it takes to be physical in college basketball. Like, it's a different world, even though Mount Verde plays a national schedule on the high school scale. It's a different world in college basketball, obviously. He's a fast learner. And I think that's another, to throw in one more intangible on the mix of why Cooper is as good as he is, the ability to quickly adapt, and to kind of understand, okay, this is the level that I need to take my game to. And then to be able to, it's one thing to understand you have to get to here. It's another thing to actually get there. That's what we've seen with the physicality that he's able to play with and play through now. And he's finishing shots at the rim. He's stealing the souls of one of the Diaz-Graham brothers against Pitt. He's just, it's astonishing.
I love watching the NBA draft each and every year and looking at where these guys are going to end up. And from the Duke perspective in particular, a whole lot of pride in where Duke guys go. And for a while, there's pushback as to whether or not Flagg's going to be the number one pick. Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey at Rutgers are getting so much love and that sort of thing. I think that's all but solidified now at this point. And then watching him in the college game, we mentioned some of those mistakes that he had in Kentucky and Kansas. That's game 3, 4, 5 on the schedule for him in his life. Now he's played 18 of them. And with all due respect to every other team in America, I don't know that there's anything you can do now to kind of slow it. In a crazy world, he's mastered college basketball, so to speak. I feel like if there are off games coming, and there probably are, he's human for Cooper Flagg, it's going to be him being off for a night or two, possibly along the way. But in terms of just figuring it out and knowing what works and what to do, it seems crazy because he just turned 18 years old. But watch the games, like you said, and it's so evident that how do you slow this guy down? I don't know that you can. I think he's to the point where he's got to slow himself down and be off.
Well, and that's the crazy thing, too, is like the games that he hasn't scored at a high level, the defense is still there. Like his motor never takes a night off. His instincts are not going to allow him to float for a half or for a whole game. Really, that's where you wind up just pointing at the competitiveness and that overarching bubble of what makes him tick, as far as what makes him a special prospect, because he doesn't have those nights where you're left wondering, like, man, was he even in the game for this stretch? You're always aware of what he is doing, what he's about to do, like what he is capable of doing. That kind of takeover ability of a game is always present. Like, it's effervescent. Is that the word? Effervescent, I think.
Yeah.
It's just always there. And I mean, that's National Player of the Year stuff. Like, that's the type of player that helps you win a national championship. The freshman that I think of that won a national championship doing that is Anthony Davis. As painful as that's going to be to bring up a Kentucky guy on a Duke podcast, but I feel like we're far enough removed from 2012 that we can talk about that.
Accept it. Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about that. Cooper Flagg, great basketball player, going to continue to get better, and he's going to be a big reason why Duke looks to have success coming up on Saturday, taking on Wake Forest. I know you've got several thoughts about the Deacons and what to expect from the Duke side of things going into this one. So we'll step aside. We've got one more break here to take, and then we'll talk Duke and Wake Forest in just a moment. New sponsor to highlight here on Locked On Blue Devils. Want to tell you about our friends at Talkspace. It's a game changer. It can help manage stress, improve sleep, and communicate more effectively. But finding the right therapist and fitting sessions into a busy schedule can be a challenge. That's where Talkspace comes in. Talkspace, the leading virtual therapy provider, makes getting the help you need easy, accessible, and affordable. With Talkspace, signing up is simple. You match with a licensed therapist who fits your needs, usually within 48 hours. And it's convenient. You can have sessions from the comfort of your home or even message your therapist between appointments. Plus, Talkspace is covered by many insurance plans. And for most insured members, there's a $0 copay. It's never been easier to prioritize mental health. As a listener of this podcast, you'll get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege and enter code SPACE80. To match with a licensed therapist today, go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege and enter promo code SPACE80, SPACE80, to get $80 off your first month and show your support for the show. That's Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege, promo code SPACE80, SPACE80. Talkspace, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. No midweek game for Duke, but they play again on Saturday. It'll be coming up on January 25th at Wake Forest. The Blue Devils are on the road. I'm joined by Conor O'Neill, who's over at Devils Illustrated. He also runs Deacons Illustrated. So this is the Conor O'Neill Bowl, as people around the ACC like to refer to it. You give me that same reaction every single time, Conor.
I know. Look, my only request is that we get through this one without having to do the whole court storm. If I could not relive any part of that for the rest of my life, I'd be okay.
Yeah. Flashbacks to Kyle Filipowski in the aftermath of that one a season ago. So Wake Forest, big win last night. They knock off the UNC Tar Heels. Wake has just one ACC loss going into this matchup on Saturday. Early thoughts here, Conor. How do you see this one playing out? What's going to be the difference?
I see if I put on the Duke glasses first, I don't think Duke is going 20-0. I think that at least in the like coming schedule, like next 2 to 3 weeks, I think the two most losable games, or the two chances they have to lose games that are higher probability than the rest of them, are this one and the game at Clemson on February 8th.
And you said that on this show 2 weeks ago, Conor. So, I mean, this has kind of been the time frame that you've been circling.
Yeah. It's tricky. Like, Wake Forest has some, I don't know the number off the top of my head. I should, and I will by Friday or Saturday. Wake Forest is like 57-7 at home in the last 3+ seasons. They don't lose at home very often. So they defend home court. Duke has lost there its last 2 trips. The quirky little thing is John Shire's lost there twice as a head coach, but he's also won there because K missed the game in K's last season. So John's interim, he doesn't get credit for that.
He's got to win somewhere.
It's not a Pete Gaudette situation where he gets credit for that one. That goes on K's ledger because he was the head coach that year. But yeah, John has coached to a win in Winston-Salem. It was just before he actually became Duke's head coach.
And as I was talking about earlier, don't even bring up the other Wake Forest game that year, Connor, where Coach K left at halftime, and then it was Shire who kind of stepped in. Wake makes a crazy comeback, but Duke holds on to it. So that's still on K's ledger, but that one's even crazier to kind of figure out, wait a minute, half a game?
Yeah, there was a good little stretch there where a Duke-Wake game involved some coaching craziness because in Forbes' first season in the 2021 year, when Duke came to Winston-Salem, Forbes got thrown out at the under 12 media timeout of the first
half. Forgot about that. Yeah.
You got a double tech, and it was like, all right, that's it. Yeah. I think I still have the video saved somewhere of him walking off the court. Like, what the hell do I do now?
Equally important to pay attention to the sidelines is what we're telling you for Saturday's game. Something might happen.
Yeah. But no, look, I think Duke, they've been playing so well for so long. It's just kind of entrenched in my mind that for them to lose a game, it's going to take them doing something uncharacteristic. It's going to take a 27% shooting night from 3-pointers. It's going to take a 15 plus turnover type of game. Giving up a bunch of offensive rebounds is something that you don't that's something you can control. If you don't control it, then the other team can take advantage of it and turn it into their advantage against you. I just think if Duke plays its B+ game against every team in the ACC, they're going to win. That's going to be good enough to win. It's going to be a night that Duke doesn't play up to that standard or doesn't come close to reaching their A standard. That's going to give them a loss. I think on the Wake end of things, Wake has to muddy this game up to have a chance to win it. We have, up until the court storm, we have great memories of how good of a game that was last year. Like Hunter Salas went for 33. It was a tour de force. Just such a back and forth, great offensive game. That's not this Wake Forest team. This team struggles to score, but they are elite. Maybe not elite defensively. Like if I say elite defensively, then, Duke fans are going to say, no, they're not because they're not us. But you get what I'm saying. Like they are really good defensively. It's the best defensive team that C. Forbes has had at Wake Forest. And so I think their chances of winning this game depend on muddying the game up. Duke is comfortable playing at a slower pace. So I think it just becomes a matter of, if Duke can, or if Wake can force Duke into missing shots, then I think Wake will feel like they have a chance. If Wake tries to run up and down with Duke, and if it gets to be a high scoring game, I think Duke can run away with this one.
Well, that's the offensive element I'm curious about. Two of the last 3 games for Wake Forest, they've made 3 or fewer 3-point shots, and 3 total ACC games already this season. It's been 3 or fewer makes from 3-point range. Yep. And then conversely, the rest of them are, the 6, 7, 8, 9 makes per game. We haven't seen kind of the offensive explosion from 3-point range that you've seen from the Duke side of things. But I want to know how the 3-point line varies for both of these teams, because if Duke does shoot a poor percentage, volume-wise, that still might be enough to kind of get them over the edge.
Yeah, it could be. For Wake, I mean, it could always come, it's always out there, but they've kind of stopped taking threes in volume. They basically reevaluated themselves somewhere in the 2 10-day breaks that they had in December. And they basically said, we're not going to shoot the ball well. Maybe we keep beating our heads against the wall and the definition of insanity, yada, yada, yada. But they basically said, we're going to stop trying to be something that we're not, and we're going to actually play to what our strengths have shown us that they are, which is drive the ball, try to score inside, get to the free throw line. Like they shot 27 free throws last night against Carolina in that win. That's the recipe for success offensively for Wake.
Wake goes 2 of 15 from 3-point range last night against the Tar Heels,
and
they won.
The two makes were in the same minute. It's not like they were, They just came, and they came from very unlikely sources with Trayvon Spillers and Tyler Johnson. Like they might have been separated by a minute and a half,
and still won the game. It's Wake Forest this Saturday, Duke and North Carolina next Saturday. So plenty of thoughts in the days to come about this Wake game, and then Conor, we'll revisit with you next week, getting set for the action that Duke has. All right, I mentioned it. You've got coverage from the Duke angle. You also have coverage from Wake. What are the best ways over these next few days for people to get ready for this game, and how can they support you?
Yeah, get on over to Devils Illustrated. It's duke.rivals.com. Got a story up there right now. Quick little read about Pat Ngongba and Mason Gillis at the 5. A little bit of update on Maliq Brown's status from earlier this week. Going to have plenty of coverage going into this one. The game preview is always the most valuable thing that I do. It makes you a smarter fan. So hope people will go and check it out.
Thanks for the time today, Conor. We'll do it again soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Conor O'Neill. He's joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. One of the best. Go read his work. It's so good. Duke.rivals.com. I will echo his game previews. You are smarter after you read the work that he puts out there. Really do appreciate your support here on the program. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our podcast feed as well. That'll do it for another episode here of Locked On Blue Devils. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.